You're listening to Conversations That Matter with your host, Terry Conrad.
Hi, everybody. This is Terry Conrad, and I am back with Conversations That Matter, and I am so pumped, super excited to be returning with one of my most favorite people on the planet, Mr. Chase Thompson, all the way from San Antonio, Texas. And one of these days, my friend, I will be coming down and getting a tour directly from you. Welcome.
Oh, hi, how are you? Okay, so I got to preface all of that by saying I've lived here pretty much my entire life. If you want a tour, though, probably going to have to hire one of my friends. Like, of everybody that knows me, I'm kind of a homebody. Like, it's terrible.
Okay, well, let's tell the people what you say about yourself on Twitter. So,
Sure.
Family first. After that, gluten-free paleo enthusiast. There's where we completely fall off the rails. I don't relate at all. Note investor, real estate investor, podcast host extraordinaire, new dad, embrace the suck is his hashtag, and note investing is his other hashtag. The embrace the suck one has really gotten some traction, hasn't it?
It really has. More than I would have thought. And so it works.
Why don't you, while we're on that quickly, what does that relate to exactly?
So everything, I think, is the reason why it makes so much sense for a lot of different things. It was originally something that I think I had said randomly off the cuff one time, like in another talk or interview or something like that. And I just used it as a hashtag on Twitter. And then it just kind of took off because it matters across, you were saying paleo enthusiast. If you're, trying to get a little bit healthier and it's hard and it sucks and no one wants to really be involved in that, you got to embrace that. If you're trying to do something in business, trying to gain some traction there, you got to embrace that. You got to work on that. So yeah, it's just kind of an all-encompassing thing where, the journey's the part that's the bad. You really got it. No. Okay. It sucks. A lot of times it sucks. Yeah. And you just have to be able to embrace that, to push forward and make it work. So.
I believe I heard you use it the first time when you were on Mobile Agent TV with Mike.
That is right. Yeah.
And you were referring to video and people in real estate trying to get into into video production, and how most people had this wall of terror up in front of them that said no. And you were suggesting that, maybe they just get like you kind of have to start before you're going to get anywhere, right?
Yeah, oh, definitely. And I think that it's actually a little easier now. There's a couple of pieces of like technology now that allow you to just really do a ton of video that no one will ever see, but you're still doing it and you're putting it out there. And then that's enough, I think, to kind of get over that hump. So they kind of help you along nowadays. But no, that's exactly right. Video is the start of all of it because I think everybody is just kind of a little bit nervous in front of it, unless you're that like 2% or whatever.
But you are not, and this is a perfect segue into how I even know you. So I discovered you years and years ago, and I found myself, I think I'm, quite brilliant for discovering you at all. I found you on The Ticker, which was your show that you hosted with Corri Corey back in the day. Tell my audience a little bit about what that was. I personally was, I think, maybe your number one biggest fan.
I think the only person that beat you to being the fan number one was my mom. I think was the only person that actually beat you. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, seriously. Or my wife, right? Like they were like 1A, 1B, I think. and then you like swooped in. So what that was an attempt. I was new in the mortgage business at the time, and that was an attempt to get business. To be perfectly honest with you, it was in San Antonio. We're not the most tech savvy place, and so that was a show about real estate and technology and how to use technology to better equip yourself out in the marketplace. Is what it was.
Right, but and that's what it was. This was many years ago, ahead of many people jumping into the video space, right. And you did it with the green screen, and it looked like you were standing in the newsroom, right? And you were sharing sort of the Entertainment Tonight segments, is kind of how I described it, where like these little bite-sized little pieces of content that were truly designed to be of use to the real estate world.
Right. It was daily, which a lot of people, so this is the part about embracing the tech, right? Yeah. So we're just going to come back. This is going to be like the hashtag for the whole show. But no, a lot of people cry, I hear even nowadays about, blogging daily or sending out daily emails or whatever the case is. And I really have to put the brakes on, right? Like I did a daily show, that involved green screen and like chroma key, just all of his lighting and all these other things, like every single day for like 150 straight episodes, until the point where it just got so busy and all these other things happened. So yeah, I don't know what you're crying about. Like throwing down 300 words on a blank screen. Maybe the blank screen's what scares you, and then that's where you have to jump in and embrace and do your thing. But but dude,
well, yeah,
like,
but
I
I'm gonna push back on you a little bit because and Michael knows that I struggle with the production of like having this conversation is one piece of the pie. Getting it produced, getting it up, getting it syndicated out to iTunes and Stitcher, making sure my post gets written, all of those things end up being this ginormous project. So it's not like this really simple. And by the way, tech hates me.
Hey, I'm not saying it's simple. What I'm saying is that when we would get in the studio, some days Corri Corey would bring a topic, but a lot of the times, no offense to her, but it was tech, and that was my jam. So
yeah.
I would have the topic ready to rock and roll. I'd set up the lights. I'd set up the camera. Once we were done shooting, I'd write on the board what we were talking about. We didn't have even a tele. That would be sweet having a teleprompter now that I think about it. But we had like a board that we would have the topic on. And then once we're done shooting, then I would take it, put it in the back end, get the whole thing edited out. And then once it's done getting edited out, then I would write the blog post, not a direct transcript, for the reasons that I think that it was a little bit better to not do a direct transcript. Now that thinking back, I still agree with that.
Yes.
So I'd also write the blog post, find all of the images, tag all of that appropriately. So I get what you're saying, but
I know. Well, and this is why we do it. I mean, everyone can find a way. What I do is I just find smart people to do things for me.
No question. But mine was at first, it was an attempt to drum up business. So I didn't have any other option. Right. And so it was like up until 2 o'clock in the morning doing the hustle and doing that. And I don't begrudge any of it. I'm just saying that those times when some people want to not, dive in and really do something that they're going to be able to grow with, I tend to, it falls on deaf ears sometimes with me.
I completely agree. So embrace the suck. Absolutely. Okay. So moving on, while you just mentioned hustle. And I think, again, that was, no subtle cue for me. Let's talk about...
It totally was. Let's do the audio version. Yeah. I almost destroyed all of my electronics by spitting out a bunch of water.
So moving on, you are now, okay, so we're still in the money biz. Tell me a little bit about how your life has sort of moved over and gotten into what you're doing now. Let's talk about that.
Right. So the real quick backstory is, so I was doing the ticker, working at a mortgage banking company, shifted to do some business development and sales and marketing for the company away from, say, the loan origination side, and ended up leaving there last year and started really kind of lost what I was going to be doing. I didn't leave necessarily on bad terms, but I left, and so we'll just go there, and then just tweet at me if you want. No, so then and so there was actually a time. So this is actually really funny. As a quick aside, one of my favorite tools nowadays. It's not like it's super not well known or anything like that, but it's called Rescue Time, and it allows you to track all of your time on your computer. Right. Go download it, Google it. It's
that
fantastic.
Would be frightening. I'm not. You gotta really want to know that information.
So you do, and so it's really, really cool. So it tracks everything you do on the computer. So like it keeps it tracked on like a scale of 1 to 5 from productivity to not very productive or whatever, anything. So anyway, when I left the job, I was at about 86% productive every single day, and I went through this funk. It was terrible. And like slowly as the weeks go on, because they send you like an email like, hey, here's your week. It went from like 80 to 70 to 60 to like,
wow.
It really dropped off because I was in this, kind of a haze, and it really sucked. So then finally got the email where it said I was only 22% or 20 or something like that productive that week. And then that's when I realized like, okay, I got to do something.
Yep.
So I shifted it onto a different side of the business. I started real estate investing in a very small niche of the market where we invest in default mortgages. Because of my mortgage background, I really understand that side of the market,
yep.
And a lot of people don't. So I invest in defaulted mortgages. So
Right.
Yeah.
And super interesting business, which I am only just now beginning to learn because of you. But obviously, in your market being a huge market for this kind of investment, yes?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's hard to say if it's like regular retail, say, investing, what a lot of people would be understanding as like the traditional style of real estate investing. I don't know which one's larger. I don't know the numbers in general, but I think at any given time, there's about 13 million notes, as they're called, mortgage-backed notes, that are available for purchase. Just like any other normal real estate investing, though, they're not all gems, right? Like they're not all shares. So it's not a true, let's call it 13 or 12, 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a true like 3, 4, whatever. But anyway, it's a pretty large market, and it's one that a lot of people, there's a lot of regulation on it. There's a lot of litigation if you're doing it wrong. There's a lot of things. So it's a really great space for me to navigate because I get it. And I work with a really cool team of people that we also get it. And so it's a lot of fun.
And one of the ways that you're driving business, of course, is that you've created this other niche company. And this is where I like, you talk about hustle. It's called No Hustle for starters. Right. So we'll talk about what the company actually is and what you've designed it to do. But one of the reasons, and I sort of want to set it up a little bit, one of the reasons that I think people really need to listen to you and watch, kind of how you've taken this and created this out of the air. And how long has it been? Not even a year.
So I've been working on it for about 6 months, the whole thing. And I was officially like off kind of the job the beginning of the year. So like 3 months or whatever it's been. So 3-4 months now. So.
And so, okay. So Note Hustle is what?
So Note Hustle is so I knew I wanted to do this type of investing, but it just like any other traditional style of real estate investing, it just might take a little bit of time to ramp up. So Note Hustle is actually a company I started to help other people, real estate investors, real estate agents, and people in the mortgage industry market themselves. So I basically come in as kind of a consultant and either do it for you or, give you, meet with you and find out what you're currently doing and kind of finding the holes in the marketing that you're currently doing. And in this space, there's a lot of people have pretty big holes, but they're still really high producers. So it's a really interesting place to find themselves in, to be doing really well in a business, and then kind of not doing this marketing arm that'll do even more for them. So it's really, really cool.
Well, and one of the things that I would love to dig in with you, because the truth is we're really, really fortunate to have you talk about this, because I think marketing is so generic, and people aren't going to just understand how valuable your information, your expertise is. I, of course, have touched some of it, always inspired. You try to tell me things sometimes and it's like way over my head, and I believe I know a few things about marketing. So I would love for you to.
You have an actual office. I'm like in the makeshift baby room here because my office got taken over. So yes, no. So what would you like me to dive in on? I'm just saying, you have like a real office. You're like legit. I'm just saying, you sell yourself short.
You're adorable. So I've finangled a few deals, but anyway. This is where it gets really interesting for me. So Note Hustle started from zero 6 months ago. You now are at the point where you are managing what?
So I manage between 15 and 20 clients that are between independent and like solo people, and then some what I would guess we would consider to be corporate clients.
Right.
So, yeah.
And you've built a list from 0 to.
Oh! We were talking about our mailing list earlier. So well, that was with another property, which I don't know if we'll talk about. But so we're at about. Yeah, so we're at about 1,000 people within the database funnel of what we're working with.
In 6 months. So to me, that's extraordinary. Yeah. That's extraordinary growth. I certainly haven't built that with CTM. And one of the reasons I haven't is because I haven't had the hustle that you have had. Clearly, you have been, and this is what I think I admire so much about you, is you had a very clear vision of what you wanted to achieve. You've implemented very specific strategies. You've used your awesome expertise to drive that train. And so now I think now's the perfect time to introduce, obviously, the podcast as part of
they're taking notes is what they're going to need to do. Oh, taking notes. Anyway. So yeah, the podcast is NoteMBA. So yeah.
On iTunes.
On iTunes. Yeah. It's doing really well.
You were new and Noteworthy right out of the
gate. Yeah, we were new Noteworthy for the entire they give you like an 8-week run, like right out of the gate. So we were that for the whole entire run. We almost made it to number 1 within our space. Somebody kept us out, but it was like somebody super famous. I can't think off the top of my head now. But it was like, come on, I'm not, like it was like competing with like, the Regis Philbin or some such. It was insane. I was like, all right, we're not gonna. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, we got to our number 1.
Regis has now been mentioned on my show. That's awesome.
There you go. Right there you go. So you can just like put that in your moniker, and then people, if they're searching for that, no. So we shot up and we did really, really well, and it was a space where a lot of people don't talk about what we do from a note investing standpoint. So we were a niche down thing, and so there was a large audience with really no voice in that space. Mm-hmm. So it was really we did well and we were doing well. But the competition is, aside from, and this just goes to the marketing thing I'm sure we're going to move to, aside from just everyone's attention being taken up by all the other content, let's say on iTunes, save TV articles, reading
Right.
books, and everything else. But there really isn't a ton of competition for what we talk about in iTunes. So we just took advantage of that.
Well,
We
and
just,
and you're obviously you were made to be like I've said this a million times, like you were made to be sort of in front of the camera or on the radio or whatever. So the podcast is a perfect
day.
Yeah, well,
I get that every day. You have like the perfect voice for podcasting. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I was hoping for the perfect face for like TV, but I guess I got the chords, so we're all good. It only
that and you have a difficult time formulating a sentence. You never know what you want to say.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So yeah, let's go into marketing. That is our shared passion. I of course love talking about brand and values and getting clarity and vision and all of those things, those different pieces that are so important, but I think become quite nebulous and overused, and people don't really know. Like, it's lovely to know what you stand for, what your values are, but how do I do that? How do I take what I'm trying to create, which is a very soulful business, and how do I move that and generate sort of that traffic, build that audience that want to hear what I have to say? How do I help them in a meaningful way? All of those pieces that I think we stamp with marketing, but nobody really understands how to do it.
Boo.
Yeah.
So number one, great question. Let you know, there's like, and you have 20 seconds to answer it.
Yeah,
I think there's a ton of ways to do it. And I think that is what is so great. And I've noticed about just, you brought up Note Hustle. I had a vision and idea for what that was going to be. And then I brought on my first client and it was a little different. And then my second and my third and my fourth. And then I realized it's really different. Client A needs X, client, Y needs Z, or whatever the case is. So what I really think it comes down to is finding the vehicle with which you can speak to the market that you're wanting to speak to in the most efficient way for you. So a lot of people talk about native either advertising or native storytelling within a platform. And what that basically means, for those that don't know, it just means that if you want to do video and you're wanting to use Instagram, you have 15 seconds to tell that story, right? And there's a certain way that people within the Instagram world will accept your story, so it's native to the platform you're on. But I really also think you need to find what is the native way that you communicate. What is the best use of how you communicate, and those people that you whoever your tribe is going to eventually be, or who you would like them to be, or the niche that you're trying to attract or work with or for, or whatever the case is. So that's 99% of my job when I'm working with myself and also others. Is just diving in on who they are, where they're from, and what is native to them. And this is really kind of strange, and I hear it all the time because it's part of the intro of one of my favorite podcasts. But this guy says something along the lines of, being honest or being truthful is oftentimes the best strategy, even if you're a sociopath, right? Like it's so random, right? Yeah. But it's like, that's true. So like, what is it that's really true to you? If you're not a writer, video. If you're not video, audio. If it's not audio, maybe it's short form question answer, long form question. I mean, there's so many ways to do it. A lot of people crush it with daily emails out to their database. Like, and if you tell that to somebody, they say, "Wait, you want me to send a daily email? They're going to hate me."
Yep.
If you're doing it right, and if that's you and your style. So that's really what it is.
But so that begs the question, doing it right, because I feel like, now that, like, when we both started, our opportunity to sort of carve out our space and build our profile was extraordinarily larger than it is today. Like, now you're competing with everybody else in the space. And how do you, like, I personally don't want to get crap emails every day. If I'm going to open your email every day, then it really has to drive value for me. It has to provide some interest, some inspiration, some education, something that's meaningful in my life. Because, by the way, I delete like however many I delete, as does everybody else, including you, I'm sure. And how do we help people create messaging in a way, like, is it getting to a point, is the pendulum swinging back where maybe there's too much now? Like, do we have an opportunity to actually stand out more with less, possibly, and better content?
Yes. I don't necessarily disagree that there is too many platforms or too much content or too much this or too much that. I think that there's, I think it's like most things is going to fall somewhere in the gray, right?
Right.
The way that I teach, consult, educate, try to do it myself. And you can probably attest this with something like The Ticker, or if you've heard the podcast or something like that. I love infotainment or edutainment or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Trying to wrap the package that I'm delivering, in some sort of entertaining way, while delivering whatever that educational piece is. And so if you're in a business where, so in this situation, if you're thinking about something like real estate investing, which is where I spend a lot of my time now, you look at like a Robert Kiyosaki, where he wrote the story in Rich Dad Poor Dad about the man with the buckets and the guy with the pipeline, which is basically this long kind of parable story about how this village needed water. So they hired two contractors. One guy had like 5 buckets on a pole, and he would walk back and forth to the lake. And every time he brought back buckets, he would get paid.
I sometimes feel like that guy with the buckets, just saying.
Right. No, but so that's the point of this parable, right?
Yep.
So we'll get to where this goes, right? So then obviously the other contractor is the guy who builds a pipeline, but of course it takes, 10, 12, 15, 20 months, whatever the case is, tons of money outlay, tons of time. You're not really sure if it's going to work, blah, 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 all this investing. Long story short, it works, right? So then every day he gets paid and he's not having to do anything. And so you want to, in his book, he says you want to build these pipelines and all this other stuff within your business, right? So that long kind of parable, and when you dive really deep in on it, it can get really, really cool, to segment and tease kind of out for your audience. But whatever business you're in, you could probably use that story and then figure out how to do it, right? Like, let's say they're teachers. So you've got teachers that just kind of like throw plans together or whatever, and they're always just kind of going back and forth trying to figure out, whereas you have these other teachers who build these quote, pipelines into the way that they teach and the style with which they teach to reach certain numbers, and, in these types of, workflows and systems and other things, or whatever, it's a garbage man or whatever the case is, right? You can take that single story, that entertaining, informational story, and then deliver it and package it in a lot of different ways. So when it comes to actually doing whatever, if it is Twitter or Instagram or email or ad copy or whatever, finding the way to tell stories, because stories are ultimately all that matter. Stories are all that matter, period. Very few people will walk out of, say, a bad movie. Everyone will just want to like, what does it end? How does it end? My wife and I have watched TV series that have gone on for years, and we don't really like love them. Sorry, Bones, but we're not like a huge fan of like, it's like just good enough that we haven't broken off yet. And we have tons of better crap to do, but it's just good enough, right? That we've now watched this show for years, probably like 6 years, and we're just like, it's on. I guess we'll just kind of watch it. But it's a story, and we're semi-invested enough that we care enough to give it an hour whenever we can, even though we're just not that in love with it. Yeah. And that is, I think, a really important message for your marketing. If you're just getting started, embrace the suck, start telling stories that are entertaining, that have really good information or whatever the case is, right? And people will stick long enough for you to hit the sales pitch if you got one. You know what I mean? Like, that's what matters.
I love it. I absolutely agree, of course. I also think that not only that piece matters, but when you talk about packaging, how it looks, the design, how it's experienced, all of those pieces are, I think, equally important. But obviously the content, the messaging, how you craft that messaging in an inspiring way and a compelling way, I do think really does matter. I think copywriters get a rough start.
Yeah, well, and we both love Gary Vaynerchuk, and I think he just, on one of his most recent shows or podcasts or whatever, he talks about this. So somebody sent in a question about quality over production value or whatever the case is. But, I would listen to Gary Vee talk through a tin can and a string, right? Like playing from my friend's 8-track from his car to my, right? Like just to get whatever that content's going to be. So totally random. I wasn't even born when those things were a big deal. Anyway, but like I would totally do that, right? Like I would get smoke signals from Gary Vee talks if that's what it was required, right? But design and user experience and delivery mechanism, those things do still matter, and they matter tremendously with all the junk, right?
Agreed.
But your content, your stories, they really have to be on point. They really have to be there.
So so walk me through, like, if you get a new client and what are the marketing pains that most of your clients seem to suffer?
So I just wrote a piece. It's not like it's anything incredible. It made me sound like I'm like for the New York Times, for Huffington Post. No, so it was like to my own personal LinkedIn page. Yeah. So I just wrote like a little piece that related to one of the podcasts that we just released, but it was about consistency and how I think that's like a new age superpower. Like that's an actual real life superpower, consistency. And that's the number one thing. That's the number one thing, aside from anything else, is consistency. Some of the most,
because I just took a huge break with my CTMs, so I'll get more consistent.
Hey, you know what I mean? Like, but that's just it. Is like whenever you're talking about things like this, and I wrote that piece, and then I was at a mastermind last week, and I reiterated and talked more about it, and a lot of people at that extremely high level group said that's something that they also struggle with. But I mean, it's like looking in a mirror, right? Like I know I struggle with that as well, and it's finding that stuff, right? Like, what are you struggling with? Everybody else is. Period.
Totally.
But yeah, consistency to me, I think is they get so pumped and they'll jump on, MailChimp and send their first newsletter and then they never send another one, or get on Instagram and do 2 photos and then you go back and look and they haven't had one in 192 weeks, or start a Facebook page that has 12 likes, or one of my mentors, he calls it, it's a really old principle and I can't think of what it is, but it's called, I think it's called building bridges or something like that. But it's basically, whenever he does it, he does like, like 2 kind of upside down L's, as it were, you know what I mean? And he draws a guy on the end of a cliff. And then he says, like you start one thing and he draws kind of like a half bridge and you do this one thing and do this one thing. And so it's basically,
never get across.
You're never going to get across. You're never going to get to that successful place. So consistency above tools, above content, above stories, above anything else. Consistency is all that matters.
It makes you wonder sort of what is that tipping point where you do sort of cross that bridge and make it to the other side and create those what are we calling them? Not the funnels, but the
like a
pipelines.
pipeline.
The pipelines.
Yeah. Like a pipeline.
Trying to tie it all together, Chase. Help
yeah,
me out.
No. I get you. I don't know. I think the tipping point. The tipping point's tough, and I think it's different per platform, maybe. We stuck with the ticker when we had on the back end analytics, like no views. I mean, literally we had, like 3 views for like 3 months, and I know they were all my mom. Yeah. Like no joke. Like my wife wasn't even watching it. And I got better at promoting, which wasn't that necessarily the case with the podcast that we did after the fact. But we just kept doing it because I didn't have any other option, I guess. Yeah. But nowadays I think you could find a team, find tools, resources, UI, anybody, right?
Yep.
And be able to get at somebody to hear what you're trying to say. But I don't know. I think the tipping point is different per platform. I really do.
Okay, here's a question for you. How do you craft your messaging to promote yourself? Because I think this is something that I've experienced with a lot of my clients, and I myself have struggled with. How do you do self-promotional posts? How do you get people to listen to your message that you want to share and you believe is useful and valuable to them without spamming the crap out of people and making them sick and tired of hearing and seeing you?
Stories. And I don't want to harp on it too.
You kind of
again, like we have to. I know, I definitely am. But no, like that's the answer. I think is if it's a new group I'm talking to, I'll tell a story about something that happened in my life or just a general case in point. One of the biggest things that a lot of my clients and a lot of people within our industry had struggled with, specifically note investing. A lot of people don't necessarily relate to this per se. But one of the things that they struggle with the most is that it's such a weird niched version of real estate investing that a lot of people just throw up on, like when someone asks, what do? They're just like, so I invest in defaulted mortgages, which basically means that and they just like totally just throw up on them all this information.
Right.
And so I told them and I kept telling them that this was the problem. This is a problem. This is a problem. And no one really got it. So basically turned it into a story, which is, I grew up near a lake, right? This big old lake, and it had these kind of wild catfish in it. And so me and my brother, we would, in our overalls and our Oshkosh and all this action, we would go down to the lake as often as we possibly could to try to fish these catfish, right? But before we'd go, we'd have to go to this little shanty thing kind of at the end of it, and we would have to get these little these chicken livers, right? So like we'd had to put those on the hook to be able to catch the catfish, right?
Are you sure this wasn't Tom Sawyer?
I'm positive. I'm totally positive.
Okay.
So anyway, so we had to get the chicken livers, throw it on there to be able to catch the catfish, right? So we caught a ton of fish. We, catch and throw back and all this action, right? But the idea is, had we thrown the entire chicken on the hook, not a single damn fish was going to be able to. We would go hungry, right? Because that's what you're doing. You're throwing the entire chicken on the hook. No one has an opportunity to put their head, mind, mouth around what it is you're trying to sell.
Yeah.
And every single client I told that to unequivocally understood, got it. Yep. And they were like, "Oh, you're so right." And that story is totally made up. So like 110%.
But the Oshkosh was a nice addition.
Right. So you just like seed in those little things. Yeah. But that was enough. And so when you're selling yourself or finding yourself in a new space or whatever the case is, find those stories, find those connection points. And I think like that's how I always start there. I always start there as I go, I want to tell a story about consistency. How can I do that?
Yep.
Well, when I was little, I fell out of an 18-foot tree trying to use a fake grappling hook because I thought I was a superhero. Okay, so I thought I was a superhero. So, well, consistency is kind of like a superpower. Okay, so like, and then I tell this whole story about how I had my underwear outside of my pants and I fell out of this tree. Yeah, right. It was a great story.
That was very visual. Underpants.
Right. It was a great story. Yeah. But I started where I wanted to go. So I want to make a sale. I want to introduce myself. I just want to have a touch point with them this month because I haven't reached out to them, whatever that is, and then find a story and then craft it and send it. It doesn't take that long, and it's the easiest way to do it.
Now, here's something that I think a lot of people, like I keep coming back to. It's one thing to have this story and have this marketing message that you want to put out in front of people. But I think where I'm seeing some struggle is when oftentimes the product or the service just doesn't resonate. And all the marketing in the world isn't going to move that needle. Have you ever experienced this?
I have experienced this. I've experienced this personally. No, I'm actually wearing a shirt for another company I started with a friend of mine that it didn't go poorly. It actually went really well. We just didn't do enough together that it kind of fell apart. But that was a situation where we just had a product that just wasn't. Peter Thiel talks about it in his book 0 to 1, where he talks about your thing has to be an order of magnitude better than the other thing, or else no one's going to care. And that's totally true. Yes, enough marketing dollars will move a needle.
Yes.
It will. It just will. That is people, and it is what it is. But you're not that person, and you don't have that checkbook. So to think about it that way is a waste of time.
Agreed.
So you have to figure out what it is that you do or you have or you can produce that is an order of magnitude better than the next guy.
Yep.
And until you do that, or at least try to do that, you're probably going to be spinning your wheels a little bit because a crap product's a crap product, no matter how much marketing you put behind it.
I completely agree. But I love, and I know you're talking about your T-shirt company. I thought Bad Hop was pretty rad. But here's the other part of the story that I think is really interesting. You started off the conversation sort of alluding to it, which is you've gone through a bit of a growth period where you've been trying to figure out where to point your nose. I, of course, was on that journey right with you. Both of us have been sort of watching the other. Where the hell is he going to land? The truth is, and you've seen this over and over again, like life is never, I'll give you an example. Jim Wahlberg, a luxury agent out of San Francisco, I had him on my CTM a few weeks ago, and he talked about, he's a sailor as well. He used to literally.
I want to say I listened to that episode.
He literally took sailboats across the freaking ocean to other places and delivered them for people. Amazing. But he talked about GPS, and he talked about how you are never actually on that straight line that you navigate. In fact, you're always correcting. And I always think of that, that little graph where they talk about the line to success, where we've drawn.
Oh, and it's always like this, like squiggly.
And that failure is actually, and I hate the word failure because it implies failure. But what failure is it's that attempt. It's that effort that you made, and that you actually tried something, and you probably in every single time that you tried anything, you've learned something, you've acquired new skills, you've figured something out about yourself or what you need to do differently in another business. And I love the fact that everything that you do it all in, you do it so well. And I'm not kidding. Like, this is the truth. I look at all of your initiatives, and they weren't failures. They just weren't quite where you were going to go. And everything, and I know you learned you know, you learned things from those different experiences. What would you think? What would you say? Because I mean, you can look back at these things and go, wow, I'm glad that happened because it led me to here. And I'm glad that happened because it led me to here.
I disagree with some. I've actually, without knowing that this was something we were going to talk about, I've been meditating for like the past 3 days on actually the word failure. And I don't know why. I think it's something somebody said and then it just triggered in my ear. So words have power right off the top.
Huge.
And a lot of people like to say, I don't like the word failure because of X, Y, Z. You know, but it goes back to nothing is either good or bad,
yes.
only the weight that you give it. So for me, failure is just the thing. It is the thing. I don't mind saying it. I don't, you know, saying a project failed or I failed at this or whatever the case is. I don't really mind it because I don't give the word enough weight for it to matter. I give it the appropriate amount of weight I need to understand that this is something I need to stop doing, take whatever I can take out of it and push my, you know, chips all into the next thing is basically how I kind of view that. Number one. And so that's just kind of a general aside, but yeah, I think, I cannot disagree or agree more. In fact, while I was doing the ticker, I was invited to a real estate event because a guy that was just becoming kind of a speaker wanted to speak on technology and social media, but he didn't quite have the chops yet. He had this other thing that he was presenting on, but he wanted someone talking about that because he knew how important it was going to be. So he was in San Antonio and he just, you know, reached out to a friend of his. He said, who do you know that knows a bunch of this stuff? And it was right in the thick of when the ticker was doing really well. And he said, hey, I know this guy. He's a young cat and he can come out and talk. So I went and I talked at this event and I was like, oh, cool. I'm glad to be here. This is great. This is a lot of fun. And I kicked it out of the park. It was a lot of fun and had a good time with it. And then stupidly, unfortunately, well, not so much, right? This is the failure part. But I just left. I didn't stay for the rest. I didn't do anything else. Now, 2015, the guy that put that on is one of the most successful people within the space I currently operate in. And I could have hitched my wagon like 7 years ago or something.
Right.
But, and he's currently one of my mentors in this space. So because when I was going through that time, I reached out and I said, hey, here's my situation. I think I can get this thing. And I remember you. I don't know if you're still doing it, blah, 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 blah. Right. And then I met up with him at a local REI thing and it just took off from there. But yeah, even in something that was going well, I still have that moment of like, this would have been a great thing to kind of hang out on and kind of have that. And a really great analogy I heard the other day about it was a lot like what is it, an EKG? What is it, the heart rate monitor thing? You know, I'm talking about like at a hospital where it's like beep, beep, right?
Yes.
Anyway, someone said that it was a really great analogy because they said like that's life, right? Like if you don't hear or see that, someone's dead. So if someone is alive and they're hooked up to this machine, that's what happens, right? It goes, you know, it's a flat line and then beep, beep, up and down, flat line, beep, beep, up and down. And that is life, right? Like you're doing things and then it's really successful. And then you have like this kind of pit and then you come back up and your life, right?
Totally.
And then you have this thing and you come back. And it was just this like aha moment to go like, that is life. Because even in this midst of like something going really well, I had this moment where I just didn't have, I had my blinders on. I couldn't see an opportunity and I came back up. And then I went up again and I came back down.
That's so true. And I've used this analogy and everybody else, it's not my analogy, obviously, but the whole you can't see the trees inside the forest thing.
Right, sure.
Where you're just, you know you could be doing more or you feel like there's something you're missing, but you can't quite put your finger on it. I feel like it's like that's where that third person or that higher view or the mentor or whoever can come in and kind of take that objective look for you and help you sort of navigate and figure out where the gaps are. I think that's so vital.
Oh, and that has been so from the people that have helped me a lot in these past few months from a coaching perspective. Number one, I think we both believe in coaching in terms of like having one. It's just like a must, I think. But in understanding from someone who's been there or been more successful than you or just has a different perspective or whatever, the one thing that I always get harped on, you know, it gets harped on me on is overthinking it. Like I'm always overthinking and I'm always I'm always putting way too much into it. Like, no, but my things aren't in, you know, this, that, or the other. And then he's, you know, just kick it out the door and then kick it out the door. And sure enough, things are fine.
I love it. Kick it out the door. That can be your new hashtag.
I know. And that's so like, that's been something that's been really looming on me in this kind of newer space is I'm just always worried that what I'm doing isn't right, or what I'm doing isn't the old guard style, or whatever the case is. And you're just overthinking it. You need to do X. You're overthinking it. You need to do it. You're overthinking it, and so that's been something that's really been harped on me recently.
I think that's something that I speak with my clients a lot about too, is that momentum that gets created by just taking any action at all.
It's totally true. The most recent thing that I kind of really latched onto is this idea of like paying yourself first. I've been reading just a ton of investment books, just trying to continue to just kind of educate myself within the space and really kind of get terms down and all that kind of stuff. But one thing that is mentioned time and time again is paying yourself first, with your paycheck or your income, whatever your income is, right? Taking that 10%, setting it aside. So that way you have that for you, right? And that's a really great principle from a financial standpoint. But I think a lot of people miss it from a time standpoint, which is a much more important, valuable asset in a commodity that you'll never be able to get back or make, right? You have to pay yourself first in time. And a lot of people don't do that. And number two, don't understand how or what that means. And so it's the first hour of every day. The first hour of every day is your hour. If it's working out, if it's yoga, if it's doing your marketing, whatever is your thing. If you are 9 to 5 in a cubicle, but you want to be a real estate investor, you want to be a coach, you want to do whatever that thing is, your first hour is that.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't go to anybody else. Doesn't go to your customers, your clients, nobody. It just goes to you. And that is what gets you to that next level that you never thought you could get to. That small little incremental, 10% of your wages or whatever, it just becomes this huge thing. The same thing happens with your time, but in a totally different way.
And so we've used the word commitment many times in this conversation, but I when I think of you, commitment certainly, but also discipline. And I know you've shared with me you set some morning rituals that you practice and that have been extremely beneficial for you. Do you mind sharing a little bit of that?
No. So this kind of falls in line with something else that you were about to say, or you said a second ago when you said this isn't something that I created or whatever. So I have a general rule. If I hear something super brilliant, I give credit 3 times and then it's mine.
Yeah. Then that's mine for sure.
So now you just take it from me.
Yeah.
Like I'll give you credit 3 times and then it's mine forever. It's ridiculous. But so the morning ritual that I do comes from a few different places, but again, I kind of call it mine now that I've been doing it for as long as I have. But I call it the daily practice. For anybody that is listening to this that happens to know who James Altucher is, super. He's a famous dude, a really popular guy within the investing world and podcasting world and video world and article writing world, all across the ways. He has this thing called the daily practice where he focuses on every single day trying to improve by 1% physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, right? But the big thing that's a part of that is writing down 10 ideas a day. So whether it's 10 ideas on how to improve eyelashes, or like eyelash, product, or 10 ideas on how to, this is where it really becomes powerful, and we'll come back, but 10 ideas on anything, right? 10 new ideas on a thing. And the reason why it matters is because everybody can do like 3 to 4 to 5. After 5, sometimes even after like 2, depending on the topic you chose, it gets really hard and your brain starts to sweat and you just become this different person after 30 days and 60 days and 90 days. And you just become this idea machine, right? So part of my daily practice is this 10 thing. On top of that, I have like a yellow pad, and at the bottom I have lines, set up for this 10 idea thing. And then at the top of that, on the left-hand side, I have a little column set up, and it has things that I'm grateful for, things that I need to do, and things, and a list, from the prior day where I was humbled by something. I just had a baby. I am humbled all the time. I have a 3-year-old daughter also. I am humbled all the time.
Yeah.
My wife, she obviously, all the things. Business is oftentimes secondary when it comes to that. But no, so I have this, what I'm grateful for, what opportunity I have before me, what I'm, humbled by or for in the past day, and what I appreciate is on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, I have the 5 things I need to get done today. And I keep it at 5. And so I have this really great kind of spiritual side, appreciation, gratitude, humility, and all this. On this side, I have a really practical side of the 5 things I need to get done today. These are the only 5 things I need to get done. If these get done, I had a successful day.
Awesome.
And then these 10 new ideas at the bottom. And that just keeps the creativity and that idea machine-ness going. And so that is my daily practice. And I've been trying to really get into meditation, which I think is phenomenal for everybody. So that daily practice, that little sheet, has transformed my life.
I'm using my passion planner. It's a new book that
nice.
It was actually a Kickstarter campaign, and it's very, very similar. And the idea is that you focus on not just your month and what were you grateful for, what worked for you last month, but it has daily focuses, it has weekly, monthly focuses, personal versus work, and all those different things. So it's similar. It's not quite the same, but we're definitely on the same page. And I love that you're disciplined enough to do that every day for as long as you have. I think that's extraordinary.
It is. It's embracing the suck. It's so hard, and it takes the full hour oftentimes from an idea perspective. But when you have, and what's really cool about the 10 idea thing, and if someone is struggling or someone's stuck or they're trying to find a new, let's say they're trying to find a new mentor, they're trying to connect with someone they can't connect with, or whatever the case is. That's a really great space for that, because then you can do, 10 ideas for how Chase can improve his business. And you go and you do a bunch of research on what I'm working on. And then you give me 10 just fresh ideas. And you go, hey, by the way, I love what you're doing. Here's 10 new ideas on some things that I think that you can improve on. And they have to, they don't even necessarily have to be great. It helps if they're great. But you just give away these 10 ideas, right? Yeah. And you will be blown away by the reaction that people have, if they reach back out to you and just all these other things. And that's one really great way to really kind of expand your network.
I love that idea. That is one of the best. Here's the thing that we're going to wrap here pretty quick. We've been riffing for almost an hour.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not a problem. And but I love that we're kind of completing this little conversation on the note of what you can actually deliver to other people that's totally just generous. It's not about the ask. It's not about driving anything other than fostering great relationships with people that matter to you. Love that idea. Super awesome. So we're now at the point in the conversation where we typically ask, let's talk legacy for a second. I know you, I know your spirit, and I know your good heart. I would love to know at the end of your day, as you're looking back, what were the things that were most important to you, and what is the legacy that you want to leave?
Boo. I've listened to most of your episodes and heard everyone's great answers, and I don't know if I have one. At the end of at the beginning and end of every day, I say thank you right when I wake up and right before I go to bed. I literally do that, and I think that that's really important. And I, like that to me is the legacy. I think I love to make people laugh and educate and do all that kind of stuff. Gratitude, I practice it. I try every day, right? Like every morning. And I've realized the power that really has in me internally. And so thank you, I think, is the real legacy, just to be able to have as many, there's 7 billion people on the planet right now, have as many of those 7 billion say that to me, is what matters. That's what I try to get every day, whether it's thank you for the great laugh, thank you for the great marketing tip, thank you for the hard conversation we had about XYZ that I'm going through, whatever it is. That to me is the most, that's the most important thing every single day.
Well, then I'm going to tell you thank you for this very excellent conversation. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. I'm so grateful for your time and your expertise and your beautiful spirit. I think you are the bomb, you know that. And you've helped me immeasurably, probably more than you know. So thank you very, very, very much. And I look forward to us having another conversation very soon.
Cool, thanks.
How can people reach you?
Twitter, at Chase CHASETH. You can send me an email at chase@NoteMBA.com if you have any really specific, marketing questions that you really want to dive in on. And aside from that, yeah.
I will be reaching out to you soon. Thanks so much, Chase.
Cool. Appreciate you. Thank you.
You're listening to Conversations That Matter with your host, Terry Conrad.